Have you ever walked through a cemetery? Not to visit a lost relative, but purely because it's an interesting place to be? I mean, look at these gravestones. This one's a perfectly functional step. How about a sundial, or even a bench? You know, there are so many questions to be asked, like, why do some people get a statue while others get, well, a rock? And how could they possibly mow this lawn? There are thousands of bodies buried here, and each one has a lifetime of stories to tell. Though I'd love to live 1,000 lifetimes to hear each one, I decided to focus my attention on this one particular grave. A single name, David. I wonder how this guy died. A chronic disease? A mechanical defect? I wanted to find out. So I did my research and compiled a short list of Dave's acquaintances. This is Chris and Marge. They enjoy grooming their dog Shandy, as well as an occasional game of butt darts. Now, they had never actually met Dave, but they claimed to be neighbors with his girlfriend Jessie. According to them, it all started with a fight between the two lovers. Dave's snoring was becoming increasingly unbearable, so much that Jessie couldn't sleep at night. They must have been at each other's throats for hours before Dave storms out the door in a rage. He's pretty frustrated with his condition, so he decides to seek some help. He calls what seemed to be 1,000 doctors, and is finally referred to a sleep specialist. He sets up an appointment for 1 o'clock in the afternoon the next day and heads over, still pretty pissed off about everything. The specialist points out several abnormalities in Dave's lungs and suggests some tests to determine the exact nature of his condition. They diagnose him with a rare sleeping disorder called apnea and send him home with a mask and an oxygen tank. In theory, it was supposed to keep him breathing steadily rather than choking and snoring all night. Well, while Dave was gone, Jessie had become increasingly worried, thinking that she had driven him away by being too hard on him. She figures he's at his parents', so she jumps in her car and heads over. When she gets there, she finds him sound asleep with a mask on his face. Now, knowing Dave to have tried killing himself in a variety of creative ways in the past, she assumes the worst, and while trying to shake him awake, she stands on his oxygen tube, causing him to suffocate in his sleep. Chris and Marge seemed like they meant well, but I wasn't sure if I believed their elaborate story, so I moved on to the next name on my list. This is Jay. He's a high-functioning autistic who enjoys hiding in the woods and stuffing his clothing with his favorite belongings. Now, Jay claims that his brother Matt was a friend of Dave's. Whenever they would go anywhere together, Dave insisted on sitting in the back seat. I guess Dave's mom was a DWI instructor. She left one of her tapes in the VCR one day, so little Dave gets an eyeful of front seat mutilations meant to put the fear of God into future drunk drivers. Well, Jay would often ride in the backseat of Matt's car too, and he loved attaching his boogers anywhere they would stick. Interestingly enough, Dave's fear of front seats was nothing compared to his fear of germs. The collection must have been getting pretty big because Dave spots it and immediately freaks out. So he makes Matt stop the car, climbs out, and gets in the front seat, which is stuck solidly in its forwardmost position. About a half an hour later, Matt drops Dave off at his house. He heads straight for the bathroom to rid himself of the rancid germs he picked up in Matt's car. Unfortunately, due to the limited space in Matt's front seat, his legs cramp up and he drowns. I found it odd that Jay's story could be so different from Chris and Marge's, so I decided to move on to the last name on my list. This is Zach. He loves playing bass and telling extremely distasteful jokes in church. He's known Dave for quite a while, so I figured that I would finally get the real scoop on Dave's demise. He says it all started with a friendly game of one-on-one. Zach and Dave were usually neck and neck on the court, which is why they would resort to alternative tactics in the likelihood of an inevitable tie. Often, this would result in violent retaliation. Well, this game involved a friendly wager. Whoever won got to eat the other's post-game garbage plates, basically meaning the winner got to eat 4 plates, while the loser got to eat none. For some reason, Zach ends up dominating the game, leaving Dave to graciously accept his defeat. So they head over to their favorite plate joint to order their regular 2 steak and sauce, all mac, 2 cheeseburger, hot bean, and hash, and of course Zach devours all 4 while Dave sits unhappily nearby. After finishing and a bit of friendly conversation, they both head home and go to bed. Well, Dave can't sleep not having had his nightly garbage blades, so he heads down to the kitchen to make himself something to eat. At the same time, Zach wakes up. He can't sleep because he feels bad about eating the plate, so he calls Dave. Well, Dave must have been only half awake or something, because when the phone rings, it scares him so much he trips and falls to his death. How many ways can one person die?
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G-Man, Hoover. Rat-ta-tat, tat, rat-ta-tat, tat, rat-ta-tat, tat, rat-ta-tat, G-Man Hoover. Rat-ta-tat, tat, rat-ta-tat, tat, rat-ta-tat, tat, rat-ta-tat, G-Man Hoover. Rat-ta-tat, tat, rat-ta-tat,